Shocked everybody's here tonight. I thought we'd all be out celebrating our $600 stimulus checks. I thought we'd be out living high on the hog. I mean, it's so much money and just an overwhelming dollar amount. I thought we'd all be having a good time. I am so annoyed by this horse shit. I've been frustrated for Space Force. Yeah, it's a lot of fun to think about that money when you think about Space Force, isn't it? $600 towards credit card debt. I mean, that helps, but my God, it's just an insult. I've been thinking so much lately about what happens with money in this country and where it goes and what it does. And it's just so gross and so disgusting. So awful. I knew they were going to get this thing done, and I knew that they were going to offer. I mean, you know, we've all been hearing this $600 figure for a while now. I think we all sort of expected it. And I knew that they were going to get this done. The Republicans were going to push it over the line because everything's about keeping the Senate at this point. By the way, greetings from a drizzly, cold, blue state of Georgia, where I have to tell you, there is no getting away from this special election. It is an overwhelming avalanche of special election stuff. And I have to tell you, it is gross. It is, they are pulling out all stops. And it's even worse because, I mean, Loeffler sucks, first and foremost, and David Perdue sucks. But they are so bankrupt as individuals that they're just like, yeah, we're going to do the racism. Let's do it. Let's just go full bore. We're not even going to play around with it. So it is one of the most putrid races I've ever seen. I can't watch something on YouTube right now without coming across that stuff. I wouldn't be shocked if in the middle of this this live stream, like, it gets interrupted by something, you know, saying that Raphael Warnock is a radical and, you know, making like weird references to race. And I mean, you know, and Ossoff is apparently a Chinese super spy, which is amazing because we already have one party that is covering for Russian interference. I mean, for another party to just, you know, cover for Chinese, like that's a whole different ballgame. But we knew that was coming. We knew that's where this is going to be, and that's what's going to happen for the next few years. The Republican Party is going to label everybody they disagree with Chinese sympathizers and socialist radicals. And I got this. I'll share with you all. This is fun. This is really, really fun. So I mentioned it the other day on Twitter that I don't know who it is, but somebody down here in Georgia named Kelly signed me up for all of these text messages and get out the vote calls. But this is fun. I'm going to read you a text message I received. Alert, all caps. So you know it's important because it's all caps. So you know it's important. Alert. The Democrats will take away your guns. Radical candidates, Ossoff and Warnock, won't stop them. They're too radical for Georgia. I mean, you got me there. I didn't know that they were planning on taking away the guns. I've never heard of that. I've never heard that idea that you know, the Democrats are planning on taking their guns. But yeah, it's pretty gross down here. It's pretty awful down here. But the stimulus passed, and now we'll all. Well, I won't get it. I didn't get a stimulus check the first time. I gave up on that thing. I probably won't get this second time either. But you know, I'm glad people will have it, but the fact that this government is not set up to help people has never been more obvious. And this is one of the things that I've talked about a lot in these talks and on the Muckrake podcast and interviews. The United States government is not set up to actually take care of people. It's not set up to better people's lives. It's set up to be a veneer of representation. That way you can make sure that people aren't going to riot and rise up in revolution because they believe that they have some sort of a semblance of representation. And then meanwhile, through their through their machinations and through their manipulations of the tax code and the economy and all of that good stuff, they make sure that all of our money is taken from us and given to the wealthiest few. And I mean, why not? Because obviously the wealthiest few are so much more competent than us. They're so much better with money. We wouldn't even know what to do with the money if we had it. I mean, hell, I'm sure you're already seeing this now. The articles are already coming out. They've already been pre-written, by the way, that are like advice on how to spend your $600. Good luck, everybody. Just don't spend it all in one place, okay? I know how, like, us poor people, we're not good with money. We're not good with money, so we're just going to spend it on something. It'd be a whole lot better if we just gave that money to the wealthy few and they would take care of it. And I don't know, colonize Mars. That's where it's at. It's colonizing Mars, sending a dumbass car up in space and waving goodbye to it. Oh, it's total crap. $600 is total crap. And I want to go in. We have so much to talk about tonight. I'm glad everybody's here. I hope your holidays are going well. I'm getting my mind into Christmas. I'm leaning into Christmas this year. This has been a rough year. A lot of things have gone on, both politically and societally or socially. I think societally is a word. Personally, I'm leaning into Christmas this year, so I'm getting in the Christmas spirit. I'm watching the Christmas movies. I have a question in here about a Christmas movie and carols. We'll talk about that in a second. I'm hanging in there. I hope you are hanging in there. This is the last Bourbon talk before the main holidays, so I hope you're all well. And I hope you all have a good one. A reminder for those who are interested, the Muckrake Podcast holiday celebration is Wednesday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. So if you want to be involved, go over to patreon.com/Muckrake Podcast. I'm looking forward to that. That'll be a good time. Muckrake people are great people. Oh no, Kevin, you got COVID. Oh man. Hope you feel better. Feel better. But to jump into the questions, and my God, we have a lot to talk about. I mean, my God, the stimulus thing we got to talk about, obviously, because it just happened and it's total bullshit and it's indicative of what's gone on. But we also have to talk about the fact the president of the United fucking States of America in the Oval Office, which, by the way, let me check my notes, we pay for. The president of the United fucking States of America sat in the Oval Office and floated the idea of a military coup. And people are like, yeah, that's really weird, isn't it? It's really weird. I don't care for him breaking norms. That's problematic. But thank God the system held as he sits in the White House and thinks about a military coup. The president of the United States of fucking America thought about a military coup. Thought about appointing a crazed conspiracy theory lawyer as a special counsel look into election fraud. Meanwhile, Michael Flynn, who he just pardoned and who is the one pushing this idea of a military coup, and we'll talk about that tonight, but I've talked about it before. It's part of a bigger grift on a bigger weird scale, which we'll get into tonight. And Americans are just like, well, yeah, I'm troubled. They're all Susan Collins. We've turned into a country of Susan Collins. Well, I am troubled, but, what are you going to do? I mean, the system is holding. System's totally fine. System's screwed, man. So we got to talk about that. We got to talk about the grift and the coup. We got to talk about a lot of big issues going into the new year, the idea of, a new presidency and where this thing is going. So we have a lot to talk about tonight. But before we do, Julie asked a question, which is, why do you think the American government, non-progressives, don't look at Europe and other first world countries and see the universal healthcare and monthly checks during the pandemic and see that we are falling very short? Do they not care how we match up? No, they don't. They don't care. And actually, there's a thing that's happened in this country. And you're exactly right. We are so far behind most of the major, what you would call first world countries. Most of the major industrial countries at this point are offering something in the way of healthcare and assistance and all of this. And it doesn't mean they're perfect. I mean, if you look over in France, like they're pulling off a lot of this neoliberal bullshit as well. Canada's messed around with some stuff, although, like Eric said, they're getting like $1,200 a month. American politicians and American business people have relied on the combination of American individualism and the fear of socialism that came from the Cold War. We have a particular cocktail of that poison here that makes sure that anything that takes care of other people isn't going to necessarily be accepted broadly. I don't know. It'll be called socialism or something along those lines. Yeah, that's exactly right. Like, you can be a patriot and not be a part of that awful, awful group of people. So they know that we're behind. They're well aware. And when they're alone, they laugh about it. I mean, this goes back. I mean, the last like major point where this thing could have got done. And of course, the Affordable Health Care Act did a lot, but it couldn't go very far because of people like Joe Lieberman. And before that, with the Clintons, you had the entire Republican Party calling it socialism and tyranny and all of this stuff. When they get together, they just laugh. They do. They have such a great time about this because they can't believe that they've pulled this thing off and that there's not more pushback. And the whole point here is that it makes sure they just don't care. Yeah, they just don't care at all. And that's one of the things that the pandemic has made incredibly and increasingly and disturbingly clear. They don't care. They literally do not care how many people die. They don't care how many people suffer. It's about bottom line because they are serving an economy. And at this point, that's the whole problem. And I've talked about this on past streams. Capitalism, particularly hypercapitalism, it can't stop. It always has to grow. And like that's like right now, like these people who are just absolutely fleecing the American people, exploiting them, extorting them, they have to get more. They have to figure out a way to get even more than what they have. They have to have perpetual growth. So if we were to actually move towards a situation where all of a sudden we would have healthcare or we would have something, I don't know, human, if we were to do that, that would represent a loss. So they can't help with that, even though they know that this economy is going to collapse if they don't give us more than scraps, which goes back into the idea of fascism. This is really, really important because we've misunderstood fascism. We think fascism is just something that like pops up and suddenly it's like, oh my God, there's fascism. Oh, there's a charismatic leader who hypnotizes millions of people and God, it can't be explained. That's not what fascism is. Fascism is the muscle and the violence that keeps capitalism on top. Capitalism always has a crisis because it relies on perpetual growth. It can't help itself. This is why we have to have regulations. This is why we have to step in and make sure that capitalism doesn't destroy itself. There has to be regulation. There has to be a regulator on a capitalist economy, or else it just absolutely destroys itself. And we've seen that time and time and time again. So whenever it gets really, really bad, say, I don't know, when mass inequality is leading to shootings and, brutality in the streets and in our homes, when there's a massive pandemic where hundreds of thousands of people are dying and nobody even does anything about it, when economic inequality leads to a point where no one has a good life, fascism starts to brew up. And capitalists are like, hey, we can use these people. There'll be a wonderful club, a wonderful weapon that we can use against socialism and the left. And so they make a deal. And they give them money, they give them support, they give them, they hide them, they empower them, they enable them, and then they get out of control. And that's what fascism is. So do corporations own this country? I would go so far as to say this: there is no such thing as a country anymore. You and I, we live in the United States of America because we're way down on the food chain. Way, way down. I've been studying this thing for the new project. It's called The Great Chain of Being. If you haven't looked it up before, look it up. Great Chain of Being. And it was this thing during the Middle Ages that basically said that there was a natural hierarchy to the world ordained by God. And it starts with God and the angels and, supernatural beings. And then it gets into the nobility or the church. And there's always a battle between the nobility and the church and some of the higher ups about who is above one or the other. That's basically human history, is the battle between the powerful, the rich, and also the church over who has predominance. We're way down at the bottom. And for us, that's like back in the Middle Ages, they were afraid of demons and witches and all that bullshit. We're still talking about nations. Corporations do not believe in nations. The powerful and the wealthy do not believe in nations. There's a reason why free trade and globalism was their main project. They're above all that. They're flying at like 30,000, 40,000 feet, and they just look down on us, and they're like, I can't believe these people are fighting about elections. This is insane. So no, corporations don't just own the country. They own all the countries, and there are no such things as countries. And yet corporations have personhood. One of the greatest lies ever told, by the way. If you haven't read American Rule, when I found that shit out, it blew my mind. We have hope tonight, by the way. Just hang on for that. Tim, with the age-old question, is it a grift or is it a coup? It's both. It's a grift and a coup. They're trying to carry a grift. They're trying to carry a coup off to further their grift. And as they try and pull off a coup to further their grift, the coup becomes real. It goes back to what I was saying about Mike Flynn the other day. Mike Flynn is doing all of this shit to cement himself as being like one of the most powerful and wealthy QAnon influencers. He's talking about military coups because that's what they love. They love talking about that stuff. They think that a military coup is going to solve everything. Sidney Powell is over here auditioning. She's made an ungodly amount of money just by bringing all these lawsuits. Why would she stop? Common decency? Her conscience? She can't sleep at night? Forget about that. Everybody in Trump's orbit is sleeping great at night. They're not worried about that. Common decency isn't going to stop them. This is about furthering their public persona. They're playing roles. And as Trump is doing this, because his entire post-presidency depends on him being the guy who had the election stolen from him, an anti-president who's going to exist in the country and still be a fake president. It all depends on him saying, you know what? I did get robbed, and so we're going to try and remedy that. And I'm fighting. It's what was it? It's the old thing where somebody gets arrested and they put on trial, and all the jurors say, if I would have been wrongfully accused, I would have been a whole lot more pissed off, and I would have fought a lot harder. And that's how I knew he was guilty. Trump has to fight like he thinks he won the election. He has to further the coup, and as a result, they're just playing roles and roles and roles. And one of the things that we don't pay attention to is we all play roles. We don't like to admit that, right? We're all just playing roles when we're out in the world, we're interacting with other people, when we're at our jobs. What's the old phrase? Fake it till you make it, right? You have to go into work and pretend that you're not nervous and terrified and that you might let things down. That's like this. I'm coming on here every Sunday night drinking bourbon and talking to you fine folks. And I know what I'm talking about, but it's terrifying. I have to come on here and pretend like that isn't some kind of nerve-wracking thing. And I was able to do that enough that I got to the point where it didn't frighten me anymore. We're all playing roles. That's the worst part about all this. We're all playing roles. And then meanwhile, and I'm glad Richard brought that off. Oh yeah, but that's the whole thing. I used to be terrified. If you would have known me years ago before I ever started teaching, the idea that I would have went in to teach a class or lecture to people would have been insane. The amount of social anxiety I had was off the charts. I faked it until I made it. Now it doesn't make me nervous anymore. Everybody's faking it. We're all faking it. That's the great secret of all of this. They're like two selves, if not multiple selves. The self you are on the inside and who you project to the rest of the world. The problem in all of this is that reality is weird and messy, and we don't like to talk about it. Which, by the way, when you talk about it, it's intimacy, and we welcome intimacy. It's one of the things that actually nurtures us and gives us hope and trust with other people, and it makes us believe in the world. And so like when you can admit that stuff and you admit, yeah, I'm nervous all the time, or I'm scared all the time, or with Donald Trump, who's a completely broken human being, if he could just say, God, this job, I'm not up to it, everyone in America would be like, at least he's honest. He's not up for it. But he can't do it. And that's who he is. He just can't do it. So it's all these facades, and this coup is an absolute facade that is becoming real. And so this happens all the time. Coups always start this way. And that's like politics. Politics is just a social construction. We just sort of make these things up and we find our way through it. Like nobody wakes up in the morning and is like, I'm going to be president of the United States. It starts off and it's like, ew, could I be president of the United States? I don't know. Would I really want to do that? And then it starts building up around people, and that idea, that facade starts becoming a reality. And it's just a big, giant thing. And this goes back to, and this is something to remember constantly, Trump's cult, Trump's base are a bunch of people who don't want to admit that they're playing a role. They're terrified people. And the reason that they're so angry and violent is because they're terrified. And they have been taught by our society that it's better to be aggressive than it is to be weak, which, by the way, is Donald Trump. Everyone's always like, oh, he's a hell of a counterpuncher. No, he's a bully. And what bullies do is that they disguise their weakness via aggressiveness. We have a massive problem in this country where we are lost in illusions. They're afraid of being exposed as weak. They're terrified that their lives are going to fall apart. They're afraid they're not going to, live up to the expectations of the people around them. It's awful. It's an awful, awful thing. This country is in such a psychological crisis. It's crazy. Crazy. It's absolutely a crazy situation. But it's a coup and a grift, period. And if somebody went along with it, because Trump brought it up, the president of the United States of America floated the idea of a military coup in the Oval Office. I don't know what else to say. Do you know what I mean? I don't know what else there is to say when that happens. And supposedly people shut it down. But it even happened. That's insane. It's a LARP. Live action role play is a great way to explain so much of this stuff. But you have a bunch of people. You have a ton of people. And it's absolutely treason. And you have no idea how many coups over the course of human history have begun like this. Somebody says, I don't know, maybe we should take over the government. And they just say it out loud. And then if somebody says, yeah, let's do that. And then if enough people say, yeah, let's do that, all of a sudden you take over a country. And all of a sudden you depose your rival and you kill them and you kill a bunch of people. Next thing you know, that fake reality that you've been living, it's projected out in the world, which is what fascism does, is it takes your own reality, which is completely false, and projects it on the world. And if you don't agree with it, well, you're either going to be murdered, you're going to be subject to brutality and intimidation, or you'll just be disappeared, period. Oh, it's awful. Oh, it's we're in such a big, giant mess. But, and Panther, I'm going to answer that here in just a minute. I think we can get out of it. I really, truly do. But the first step in any of it is acknowledging what the problem is. And that's what the problem is. That's where we are. And people don't like talking about it. It's weird. And by the way, I just mentioned that this is about intimacy. People are terrified of intimacy. They're terrified of having large, big conversations. But I can tell you this. I'm able to do it on here because I feel close to you. You are kind people who are supportive, and you come out like on Sunday nights, and we've formed like a little tiny community here. I've watched people take care of one another. If you feel safe, you can start to engage in intimacy. If you engage in intimacy, all of that facade and all that poison that I'm talking about, it goes away. It can be dealt with. That's one way we can do it. There is hope. Noel says, everyone keeps saying the military will not support a Trump coup. I'm not reassured. How about you? I don't think they will. This goes back to what I've been talking about a lot recently, which is the military hates Donald Trump. It's pretty shocking that a Republican president can end up losing the support of the military. But he has degraded military commanders. He has talked down to them repeatedly. He has called them losers and suckers and said that they died for no good reason. That's a good way to lose the military. I was reassured during the Black Lives Matter movement whenever all of the commanders started sending out memos reminding troops that they had sworn an allegiance to the Constitution and not the President of the United States. I don't think it's going to happen. Oh, the bounties thing. Thank you. I'm so glad that you said that. The bounties thing, the Iraq thing, where he said nobody got hurt or whatever. And, the John McCain thing. Yeah, the military is not there for Donald Trump. If he had not squandered the support of the military, I don't know where we would be right now, which again is why I keep saying I think it could be worse. But no, I don't think the military will go along with this. I think there are members of the military who would go along with this. A lot of them, actually, I think would go away with it. But I don't think that there's a situation where that has grown. But this whole conspiracy theory that this election was stolen and things like QAnon and continued right-wing conspiracy theories, if you look back, and I talked about this in American Rule, Timothy McVeigh was a veteran who got radicalized partly in the military, and there were parts of the military that agreed with him. So if you start looking at like cells within the United States military that after this might end up becoming radicalized, yeah, that's frightening. That's totally frightening. Sean, what % do you think the military coup here is possible? Honest to God, 10%, I would say, which is a terrifying number. I would say that there is more of a chance of there being a crisis where the military has to intervene in order to keep the peace, and part of it would involve violence in the streets, particularly based on Trump supporters and street gangs, stuff like that. I don't know. I think that that's more likely than just a blatant military coup, which I don't think is going to happen. But there could be a crisis where something like that could happen. I'm putting that at slightly more, 15 to 20%. I don't think it's going to happen, but the fact that it's happening is a problem. Is there a scenario, this is not cheery, but is there a scenario you can imagine that would lead to a Holocaust in the United States? Unfortunately, yeah. I've talked about it in the past. If we don't nip this fascist problem in the bud, we're going to look at climate catastrophe, and there are going to be a lot more climate refugees. And if they're treated with such inhumanity as that crisis comes to a head, I think we're in a lot of trouble. Which is why we have to stop this thing. Climate's going to make things so much worse, because I keep talking about this. Capitalism and the system relies on constant expansion and growth. Well, there you actually have the country being herded in closer, and those internal frictions are going to get worse and worse and worse. That's what history tells us, is that internal tensions are dispelled when you push them outwards. You go to war against Iraq or Vietnam or something like that, and you push them elsewhere. But when they're internal, and if they shrink, it gets worse. It gets so much worse. And if you have an America that still has that myth of American exceptionalism and the dehumanization of immigrants, that'd be pretty bad. Ocean Lover, the Powell Woods camp are all tweeting about Executive Order 13818. There's so many of these things, which is a giant problem with all of it. Oh yeah, absolutely. There was a genocide in America already. We should talk about that. The Native American population, unfortunately, was targeted for genocide and ethnic cleansing. They think means Trump can have a rerun of the re-election. Was this actually allow? No, it doesn't allow any of that stuff. The more frightening thing, again, is that politics is a social construction, and you can just make things up. They can try a lot of shit, but I don't think that adds up. Max, here we go. Favorite Christmas carol and movie. I'll tell you what I really enjoy. Cheers, by the way. Thanks for hanging out. Drizzly, cold evening before Christmas. My favorite Christmas carol, weirdly enough, is Little Drummer Boy. I love it. I love Little Drummer Boy. It's so dramatic. Little Drummer Boy is awesome. Yeah, I do enjoy Little Drummer Boy. I enjoy Lennon's Happy Xmas, War is Over. I think that's a good time. Good times. My favorite movie, I have to say, My family is a National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation family. We will watch it every Christmas Eve. Unfortunately, we won't this year because of COVID. It'll be the first time that I don't spend Christmas with my mom, which sucks. Really, really sucks. But we always watch Christmas Vacation. It's probably the movie I've seen the most out of all movies because I watch it every Christmas Eve with my family. Although very, very close up with it, there are a couple of movies that I teach in screenwriting in my classes. So I teach like Rushmore. I've taught Ghostbusters. I've taught Jaws, Big Lebowski. I've watched those a ton of times for those classes. But yeah, I would say National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, I think, is probably my favorite Christmas movie. That movie, the more that you watch it, the more that you watch National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, it opens itself up. Because at first, obviously, it's, I make my own eggnog. I love eggnog. Eggnog's great. So when you first start watching National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, it's about Clark Griswold. Obviously, it's about Clark Griswold. But, Cousin Eddie is like the main attraction of the movie. Cousin Eddie is the funniest. The more that you watch it, you start finding Todd and Margot next door to be funnier. They start becoming very, very funny. And then right now, in my current iteration of paying attention to National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, I'm loving the aunt. The aunt is so funny. And when she comes in for Christmas night, and she's like, "Don't throw me down, Clark. Don't throw me down, Clark," is one of the best lines in the entire thing. I just watched Die Hard the other night. Great movie. Excellent movie. Monday. Hope you're well. I hope you're well. What are your thoughts on how things will play out around the holidays? Will this attempted coup come to a pause or perhaps build steam as people are distracted? Feels like a perfect opportunity for more Trump mayhem. I still think that Trump is going to go to Mar-a-Lago for Christmas and not come back. That's what I think. That's where I think this thing's gonna go. I think they're gonna go. He can't stop. He's addicted to attention. He cannot quit. He'll talk a bunch of shit over Christmas. I would bet. You ready for this? Here's a bourbon talk bet. A bourbon talk wager. I don't know what I'm betting on, but whatever. I bet on Christmas Day, Donald Trump tweets first about the election being stolen, then wishing people happy holidays. Mark it down. I don't know if there's anywhere to put that bet in. I don't know what we're betting on, but I would bet money that Trump first mentions the election being stolen, then wishing America a Merry Christmas. That's a bourbon talk lock. But anyway, I think this coup thing, I don't think it's ever going to stop. I think they're going to continue talking about it, and it's just escalating. Like, what is time? I was thinking about this the other day. It was like I was streaming over here on my porch, I want to say like 3 weeks ago. And I was like, oh my God, this thing's still going on. And I cannot believe we're still talking about this. It's just getting worse. And it's just increasing. So now we have him in the Oval Office pushing the idea of a military coup. It's not going to stop. It's just going to get worse. And we're just going to hear more unhinged bullshit coming out of Trump. Yeah, I don't think there's going to be military involvement. I don't see that happening. Synonym, cinnamon rolls for you. It's a good little pun. Are we past the point of no return? No, we're not. I actually have hope. I actually have a lot of hope. Studying history shows me that in moments where there is no hope, there's hope. And studying history and movements and reactions has made me more hopeful. I think that this moment of, that's like things like this $600 stimulus thing. Like, it's so offensive and stupid that it actually makes me feel hope. It actually makes me feel like, oh, everybody realizes this is horrid bullshit and that something could be better. The more that they push the inequality and the scam of austerity, the more that it's just, it. First of all, it's making people radicalized on the right and in the fascist movements, but it's also waking up a lot of us. The fact, if you would have told me 4 years ago that I was going to be on a live stream talking about artificial austerity and grassroots leftist progressive action, I'm just the dude from Southern Indiana, people. This isn't what I thought was going to happen in my life. I never thought that like I was going to be sitting here on a porch with a ring light during a rainy December night drinking bourbon and talking about vast inequality and the need for progressive movements to like redistribute wealth. You'd come 4 years ago. Yeah, it's raining. It's nice out here. 4 years ago, if you would have time traveled back and told me that this is what I was going to be doing, I would just be like, what in the literal hell are you talking about? I mean, I had leftist ideas, but I never thought I would be doing this. This is, yeah. So I have hope. I don't think we're past the point of no return. I think, and I've been talking about this for a while, I think we're at the precipice and things could get really bad. Really, really, really awful. But, you know, Rin, I forgot to get back to you about coffee. We need to talk about coffee. I forgot about that. I'm so sorry. I think the future could be really, really awful. But we need to get better. And yeah, of course the Lincoln Project is taking over MSNBC. That's the narrative that all these people want to push. It's the perfect idea, which is that there is a consensus and level-headed people. Steve Schmidt became a Democrat because, of course, he became a Democrat. The Democratic umbrella is opening up wider and wider to bring in people like Steve Schmidt, who gave us Sarah Palin and pushed, all of these ads and all of this division. They're bringing in, what's his name? Wilson, who has become a favorite among the left because he makes these searing ads. Bill Kristol, who, by the way, I was talking earlier about who are the people who have kept us from getting universal health care and healthcare in general. Kristol. He's the guy that spearheaded that in the 1990s. He said, if you allow the Democrats to pass health care for all, we're never going to beat them in an election again. So my relatives and your relatives for the rest of their lives are going to live shorter lives and not have health care. So no, they're going to be brought in. Absolutely. You can like Rick Wilson, but we don't need to take his political advice, and he doesn't need to be a Democratic spokesman. There's a difference between liking his personality or whatever and not realizing that he's done some really awful things for the GOP. That's the thing, is everybody now wants to believe that everybody is all perfect or all bad. Everyone's either a messiah or an antichrist. And that's not how politics work. That's what happens when you have two main parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, blue and red. Democrats are not perfect. People who agree with us are not perfect. They're just not. And there's room for nuance. There's nobody out there that's perfect. I agree with you. People can redeem themselves. Cheers to that. Amen. There'd be no hope for any of us if we could. Anyway, no, we're not past the point of no return. We can make this a better country. We can have a much better country. And I think we're going to do it. I really, truly do. I think we're going to do it. Just your average Endora. Is it just me, or does it feel like we're all just sitting around collectively holding our breath, waiting for someone to do something? Why aren't the Dems out there screaming about it? There's a couple reasons. The Democratic Party, first and foremost, they're terrified of engaging in these rhetorical debates with the Republican Party and calling them out who they are. Well, and by the way, BB just said there are two neoliberal parties, which I think is true. I agree with that, but we're always wrong about what that means. Neoliberal plays games with people's minds about what it is. They think it means liberal, but it does not. It's about market choices, market freedom, which is the idea that government should just kind of help businesses, and businesses help people with trickle-down economics. It won over in America. It won over in Britain. It's winning over all around Europe, and it's failing. That's the problem. We've had a technocracy. We've had a government that has been run by so-called experts who, don't really believe that much can be changed. The most you can do is just maybe help a couple people out on the edges, but otherwise there's not much else to do. And that's one of the big giant problems. And also it doesn't help understanding with this term neoliberal that everyone thinks it means liberalism. It does not. It's about markets. It's about free markets and assisting the market versus necessarily helping people. Jess, given the COVID death toll, would it be a fair assumption to say that people might compare this tragedy to moments where people deny they even happened? 100%. 100%. There will probably be, over the next few years, on the right, there will be people who say that the COVID death toll is completely made up. They've already started that, right? They've already said, that, they're all flu deaths or heart-related deaths or whatever, and that's all inflated. And they'll say that doctors and scientists are using it to get grants and line their pockets. They're already saying it, and it's just going to get worse. That's the worst part about all of this. That's one of the reasons why Holocaust denial happens. On top of white supremacy and all that bullshit, yeah, they say this stuff is a hoax, and that's what will happen, which is really offensive for all of us who have lost people. And been away from our families and missed out on so much. And like me, I've been pretty much holed up since March. It's so gross. It's so gross. So gross. It's hard for people to wear a mask for multiple reasons. One, going back to the idea of facades, like for, toxically masculine men, to wear a mask is to admit that there's fear. It's to admit weakness. And that's one of the reasons why the mask thing never took off in America. On top of, there's a big major problem, which is American individualism and American selfishness is all about, I got to get mine. If people said it would keep you from getting COVID and that's what a mask was for, that would have worked out. But the fact that it was you wear a mask to take care of other people, the moment they did that, done. That was it. That was just done. There's no more going through that. Oh, the man aspect of this whole thing's so gross. If they would have just, and by the way, this is important. I don't know that I've talked about this on here or on the podcast, but it's very, very important. Trump could have made a shit ton of money off of masks. Because there's the only thing that his supporters loved in acting tough is showing off their allegiance to Trump. If he would have said from the beginning, you all should wear masks and I'm putting out MAGA masks, oh my God, which only points out how bad Donald Trump's instincts and business acumen are. If he just would have told people to wear a mask and just put out a bunch of like cheap ass made MAGA masks, or something like says like, fuck your feelings or whatever, he would have made so much money. So much money. But he sucks. He sucks as a businessman. Sucks. Oh, the flags aren't just on trucks. Around here, you have Trump signs that they're starting to decorate like highway memorials with like flags and shit. Don't tell me this ain't a cult. This is a cult. Let me get some more. Rich H. Rant says, can you give an update? Oh, I forgot about this. Can you give an update on the explosion you heard and the significance of the lack of news coverage? As a community journalist, I'm interested in your thoughts. Yeah, so the other night, around about midnight, give or take, I was going to bed, and there was a massive explosion. And the massive explosion, like, rocked my house. It sounded like it was a couple of blocks over. It was crazy. Tonight I'm drinking Bullet. I'm drinking Bullet Bourbon tonight. There was a massive explosion, rocked my house, and I was sitting there, and I was like, "Where are the police cars? Where are the ambulances? Like that sounded like a house blowing up." There's another one. So there's like a wastewater treatment plant in town. I thought maybe that blew up. And then meanwhile, I've been talking to a lot of people lately who they're talking about right-wing extremists who are like setting off tannerite. That's a possibility. They're doing like small gun training around here, small arms training. I assume it possibly could be some tannerite going off. I don't know, but it kind of rocked my world a little bit. I'll be honest with you, because I got up the next morning and I got my coffee and I started looking online, and I expected the local paper to talk about it. Oh, absolutely. I would love some bourbon from a small distillery in Alaska. Absolutely. I'll tell you what, as long as the getting is good, I would take a bourbon endorsement for Bourbon Talk. Let's make that happen. Let's throw some stickers on here. I'll look like a NASCAR driver, man. But I expected the local paper to talk about it. But of course, my local paper, like I assume a lot of your local papers, there's nobody employed there anymore. It's not even their fault. Those people work their asses off. And they nobody mentioned it. Nobody said anything on social media. No, the propane explosion was a few days ago. So I just had this moment where I was like, oh, this is a real issue. Because we've grown more alienated and disconnected. This is a massive problem. And I actually have a question here. Somebody's going to say, what can we do? And we'll talk a little bit more about it there. The local news desert in this country has allowed so much radicalization, because what has actually happened is that the Republican Party destroyed middle America, just bulldozed it, and everything from NAFTA to Reaganism, all of it. No, I still don't know what the explosion was. No idea. So the Republican Party destroyed middle America, and middle America is like, what the hell just happened? What happened to our lives? And the Republicans are like, you know what? People of color, I think, did this to you. You should vote for us. We'll build that wall. Don't worry about it. And that's where it went. That's where it happened. That's what happened. And so the nationalization strategy of Newt Gingrich and the GOP of the 1990s and Rush Limbaugh, all of that, it radicalized middle America. They can't get information. They can't get explanations for what's happened. And what happens when you don't understand what's going on in your life and that powerlessness is there? Conspiracy theories come in and they fill the vacuum. We have to solve alienation in this country, and we have to solve inequality in this country, both all types of inequality, in order to stave off radicalization. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. And it got my mind all messed up, which is, if this country starts to fall apart, like, how are you going to know? You know what I mean? Like, how are you going to know what's going on in your town? How are you going to know that infrastructure is starting to fall apart? How are you going to know that, there are roving gangs? So if we are in trouble, if something bad happens, and that's the problem, Carrie's exactly right. Alienation cannot be solved under capitalism, because alienation is one of the key components of capitalism. You have to make sure that people don't talk to one another. You have to make sure that people don't compare notes. You have to make sure that people aren't able to talk about how much they're getting paid or how their bosses are treating them. The best case scenario for capitalism is a bunch of people who don't trust each other and see each other as economic competitors, which is what's happening right now. The problem is that it leads to radicalization, and then they'll take the radical people and they'll use them as weapons against people who want to actually change things. Alienation is a prime component of capitalism. Which, by the way, you want to talk about a pandemic situation, there's a really frightening thing that's happening. A lot of the corporations who employ people are recognizing right now that there's no reason to have offices. You don't have to pay the rent. You don't have to pay insurance. You don't have to pay for utilities, all the stuff around there. In fact, you can probably cut out some of the middle managers while you're at it. And you can use technology and software to spy on the people at home as they work from home. And do you know what happens if you all work from home? You don't talk to your coworkers. Thank God. There it is. We just helped capitalism. All of a sudden, you can lower all of their wages because there's no way they'll work together. They won't compare their positions. And on top of that, they'll see each other as economic competitors. I didn't plan on getting into this tonight, but I'll talk about it. Whatever. Yeah, let's talk about it. It's one of those situations where we are in a perfect situation for a technocratic authoritarian state. Watch us, know what we're doing, make sure that nobody talks to another person. And if you disappear and suddenly your job opens up, people aren't even going to ask questions. They're just going to slide in and take that job. Slide in and take that job. Yeah, they'll cut my feed. Absolutely. Because talking truth, I mean, that's legitimately what's happening in this country. The meetings that are taking place at corporations right now, talking about how to take advantage of the pandemic and the human suffering of the moment, it's incredible. It'd make you lose it if you knew it. But no, it's alienation. It's an absolute problem. By the way, it didn't hurt that social media makes you feel like you're keeping in touch with everyone you know, but you're not actually keeping in touch with them. That's part of it, Drew, is that desperation does work hand in hand with alienation. That's the problem. That's the massive, massive problem of all of this. And what happens is that you like all of these people that are being radicalized into street gangs, fascist movements. And I've talked about this before. I've talked to enough past white supremacists and white terrorists. And they'll tell you, we like to find white men who have no money, no direction, they're alone. We tell them they're powerful and they don't have to be afraid anymore. And that's exactly right. No, Monday, that's exactly right. As long as we're fighting for scraps. And by the way, you'll notice that our culture, and again, I didn't plan on talking about this tonight, but I mean, what the hell? What else are we doing? The culture war shit that we're all engaged in, we're fighting about symbolism. We're fighting about things that don't actually change anything. We're just sort of like cheering on phantoms on a wall, right? We're all talking about issues that don't actually change our material conditions or our political power or status or place in life. Instead, we're talking about who's getting cast in what movie and whether or not and you'll notice, by the way, that it ends up becoming a thing where it's like, well, Nike, and I've talked about this before, Nike pays a few $1 million to Colin Kaepernick to pretend like they care about justice and treatment of people. Meanwhile, they're carrying out sweatshops and exploitation around the world. And then all of a sudden, Republicans are like, we're not going to buy Nikes anymore. We're going to buy New Balances. And then the left is like, I'm not going to buy New Balances. I'm going to buy Nike. And it's just symbolic gestures. I'm not going to buy this product. I'm not going to buy that product. And suddenly we're not actually even talking about politics anymore. We're talking about consumerist choices. That's madness. That's absolute madness. It's performative activism. That's exactly what this thing is. And you're not actually going to change the world or change anything as long as you're fighting those symbolic battles. Now, do not get me wrong. There are times where it's like, that is disgusting, that is racist, that is sexist, that is xenophobic. These are awful things that you're saying you shouldn't be saying. But what we're doing right now is we're engaged in battles that don't have anything to do with material conditions and or political power and structure. We have to take that energy that we've been using. And by the way, this is important. Twitter is a business that takes our outrage and just defangs it and commercializes it. That's why I kept saying the other day, we have to stop retweeting articles we don't like, because that doesn't do anything. It just gives more likes and tweets and all of that to stuff that we don't agree with. But we're doing it on Twitter because it's performative sometimes. We have to understand what Twitter is and social media is and use it for what it's supposed to do, which I'm going to talk about more in a second. I have another question about that. But it's been reduced to rooting for a team like with sports. And by the way, I'm a Cubs fan. I've had basically one successful season in my entire life. 2016, which go figure. The Cubs win or lose, I support them. If you can't draw the lines between that and political parties in this country, I don't know what to tell you. But people are actually dying. People are actually suffering because of it. Ryan Sandberg, my number one, my favorite baseball player of all time. So that's what I'm saying. It's all symbolic. We have to move beyond symbolic politics. Have to move beyond it. And we have to actually, and by the way, the Republican Party, they are obviously making people vote for symbolism, but they are consolidating power behind the scenes, which is not what the left does. Left used to do that. The left is afraid to do that now because of the Soviet Union and because communism was so ugly and failed. Leftists are afraid to say, I think there could be a better world. I think that we could have progress. We're much more comfortable with losing and being martyrs. That's a problem. That's a massive, massive problem on the left. Which, by the way, is how you end up with something like the Democratic Party that loses all the time and says, well, but we were on the right side of history. You're not going to debate these people, and you're not going to say the right argument, and suddenly they're going to be like, you know what, you're right, I'm done being racist. That's not going to happen. And I know that feels like it should work, but it's not going to work. That's the problem. Kelly Carter, any chance of the 25th Amendment? No, these people have absolutely no conscience. They're not going to do the 25th Amendment, unfortunately. Hairball, do you think that if Trump were to be impeached again, he and his attorneys would be so distracted in trying to come up with a defense that they drop the coup attempt, something to keep him busy? I mean, I think that could be a way to do it, but the Democratic Party is never going to try that. They unfortunately, they're just going to try and wait this thing out and wait for the system to cough them up like a hairball, so to speak. The Republican Party would have, if the shoes were switched, the Republican Party would have impeached this guy like 8 or 9 times. They would not have stopped. Worker 19. This entirely insufficient relief package will provide just enough to purchase a decent pitchfork or two. Hey, I have to tell you, we are tiptoeing into the territory of popular revolt. We just are. And, the Black Lives Matter movement in the summer, if that didn't wake up people and make them understand that we are tiptoeing up into that territory, I don't know what to tell you. Because that should have woken some people up. It really should have. And it didn't. It's a problem. But we are, I've been looking at a lot of history. I've been doing a lot of research on past projects and this project. We are, we're inching up, because that's another thing that capitalists don't understand, and that the powerful aristocratic class doesn't understand. They think that the getting will be good for forever, and that people will just, line up and say, thank you, sir, may I have another? That's not what happens. Their plundering, their extortion, their exploitation woke me up too. I mean, I was always around where I'm at now, but this has it's opened my eyes. I'm actually, while we're waiting on the 1 hour mark to toast, I actually started reading Kurt Anderson's new book, Evil Geniuses. He was Yeah, Cynthia, we'll talk about that in a minute, for sure. Kurt Anderson's book, Fantasyland, is absolutely a must-read book. It's excellent. His new book, Evil Geniuses, which is about how like the wealthy aristocratic class has sort of changed America around and made it unequal in a really terrible, inhuman way. He even said in his preview or in the opening, he was like, I used to be a really happy neoliberal, and now I'm sort of becoming a democratic socialist. Which, by the way, like I don't think he expected was going to happen. I think it kind of shocked him. A lot of people they're moving. A lot of people are moving because this shit cannot stand. Hey, everybody. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Cheers. Y'all are the best. I'm so glad you're hanging out with me. It's really nice of you. All right, I got 3 questions here sort of around the same sort of topic. I'll read them all. Ellen Williams, if Goofball Sanders, Ron Johnson, or Tommy Tuberville. Cannot believe Tuberville. Cannot believe he won, but here we are. Opposed the results. Was that due to the process? Surely 1 or 2 senators can't throw a wrench in this. Alfonso, how will the January 6th clown show go in Congress? Wondering how many congressmen will conspire with the cult. Barbecue, beer, and freedom. By the way, the barbecue, beer, and freedom guy, one of the unsung heroes of the election debacle. Coming out with the mask down, first and foremost, wearing a shirt that says barbecue, beer, and freedom, and just screaming at election officials. Incredible content. Incredible content. What a moment for that guy. Incredible. I don't think that they're going to reject the Electoral College results. I think it's a bunch of posturing. You might have a couple of people who try and throw a fit about it. Nothing's going to happen at that level. Nothing's going to happen at that level. It's just a bunch of posturing. Again, the grift or coup. You have a lot of people who are pretending that the coup is real in order to push their grift and their own personal branding. Everything now is divided on whether or not, as a Republican or on the right, you tried to stop the steal, or you just sort of let it happen. And you have to make a choice. You have to figure out on which side of the register you are. And then you have the smarter people like Mitch McConnell who like straddles that line right in the middle. He knows exactly what he's doing. But most of them are they have no idea what they're doing. They're so untalented and they're so stupid. The Republican Party is just so devoid of talent that they really don't know what they're doing. They're so bad at this, and it's taken radicalization, misinformation, propaganda, and a total media apparatus to even get them elected. They are so untalented. So untalented. Grant, what can normal people do? You mentioned rejecting Trumpism, but what does that mean? Okay, so I wanted to talk about something very, very quickly because I read this from Grant, and I wanted to talk about this. First and foremost, I'll tweet about fascism and the threat of Trumpism on Twitter, and all of a sudden people will be like, yeah, but what do we do about it? Well, first and foremost, you have 280 characters on Twitter. We have to be smarter about how we use that place. When I talk about this stuff, I want you to think sometimes about it being a seed, okay? So on one hand, you can have practical power. You can have you can form alliances and solidarity and grassroots organizations that take care of each other, which is one part of this thing. The other is that some people, in order to push that idea or in order to change things, they have to germinate the awareness or the culture with ideas. All right. So we can go online on a thing like Twitter and we can germinate the culture with ideas. We can push the idea, which, by the way, like we're talking tonight about the fact that like austerity is artificial or that these stimulus checks are bullshit. That all of a sudden can affect people who will then be like, hey, maybe we should be a part of this over here, this organization. Okay. So on one hand, we can use Twitter and short circuit the capitalistic manipulation of Twitter, which commodifies your outrage. We can sort of short circuit that, and we can use social media as a means of educating people and making them aware of what's happening. Meanwhile, on the other side of that, We have to figure out some sort of a grassroots organization. I've been talking about this for a while. We're a community. We're hanging out. We're talking about this stuff. We have a common language, a common experience. We trust each other. We can engage in intimacy where we discuss things, and we trust one another to be there for each other if something happens. Okay. Like I have to tell you that, like, if my life fell apart, I feel like I could come on here and be like, my life just fell apart, and somebody would be an actual human and say, I'm sorry that your life fell apart. I feel like we would probably take care of each other if that happened. Okay. That's important. What we do with that, we have to figure that out. Now, I think that has to do with pushing the Democratic Party further left. I think that there is a momentary pause right now, a breath. I think we have to make Democrats aware of the fact that if they don't start actually helping people and they don't actually start working towards human projects and increasing the quality of life and fighting inequality in this country and actually fighting back against fascism, well, they're not going to be in office much longer. That's what they need to understand. Because right now, they're not worried about it. There's one game in town. You're either a Republican, so you're a fascist, and you are just out there. And you are engaged in just an absolute fantasy world. Or you're over here and you believe in elections. Like, that's all, like that basic human decency and believing in democracy that gets you in the door of the Democratic Party now. That's a problem. Like, they should not take our votes for granted. So I think it starts with holding them accountable. I think you either push this thing further left and you start actually working for the things you say that you believe in, or your ass might get primaried. That's what the Republican Party has done for decades now. That's how they gained control of that party. That's how they pushed it right into fascism. Run for something. Find other people. Put things together. Our leadership is, I'm not part of the Democratic Party, but you're right. The Democratic Party leadership is incredibly old. Run for something, join people, join grassroots organizations. Do not give to the same campaigns, because all they're doing is giving to political consultants who are spending your money on their own projects. They're making a mint off of you. It's disgusting. So I think that's how it starts. And I think you have to reach out to people and you have to repair alienation, which is a massive thing. I keep pushing this. We have to start trusting one another again. That's how we push back against radicalization, alienation, and how we start building political movements and projects. If we don't do that, we're fucked. We're fucked. We got to start trusting each other and repairing alienation. If we don't do that, we're just done. We can have an actual progressive movement in this country. If you want to learn how this stuff works, I don't know. I would love if the Democratic Party went back to its roots. That'd be awesome. The 1960s Democratic Party, 1970s Democratic Party, before the DLC moved them further right and made them embrace Reaganism, that'd be awesome. I would love to get back to a working class party. But I have to tell you, in the late 1980s, early 1990s, the Democratic Party embraced neoliberalism and started wrapping their arms real tight around the moneyed class and corporations. It's a problem. I don't think we should trust the Trumpers. I don't think we should trust the Trumpers. I think that's a completely different conversation. Yeah, there's a lot. Oh, no, Reagan went right and he drugged the Republican Party, and then the Democrats went right along because they decided there was no way whatsoever that they were ever going to defeat Ronald Reagan or the Republicans. So they became Republicans with a human face on it. Yeah, food organizers, good organizers. But we got to find something different. If you want to know how things can change, go back and look at the progressive movement of the early 20th century. Look how that stuff took over. And I'll tell you, the people of the Gilded Age, they didn't think there was any way that they were going to overtake the robber barons. Our situation looks a lot like the Gilded Age. A lot like the Gilded Age. Weirdly like the Gilded Age. So if you want to learn how to like build those movements, look back at that time. Yeah. Wolfie Blue, I'm glad you asked that because this is important. What do we do with the 74 million when we pull left? They aren't going away. Well, what we have to do is we have to stop engaging in culture war clashes with them, and we have to do economic projects that will actually start to de-radicalize parts of them. It goes back to what I keep saying. You're not going to go into my small rural town where I grew up or the state where I grew up and just be like, hey, this has been really racist and it's been really fascistic. That's bad. They're not going to stop. Like, that actually is like a non-starter. But I keep saying this. If you want to get people believing in climate change, build a bunch of alternative energy factories throughout middle America, and they will fight for climate change because they have an economic incentive to fight for it. So I think if you start actually lowering the temperature in this country, which is what FDR did with the New Deal, he didn't necessarily save the economy. What he did was he kept a bunch of people from becoming fascist and joining with Lindbergh and America First and the Silver Shirts and the American Nazi Party. What happened was it actually moved things away. So if we start getting jobs and we start getting things that people, yeah, that's the sad truth. People with economic incentive will stop becoming fascist. Well, the problem with the abortion issue is that the abortion issue is solved. Like, a vast majority of Americans support a woman's right to choose. It's actually a completely dead issue. And by the way, this is important to point out. Hey, pour one out for Eugene Debs, Socialist Party, Indiana. 1 million votes from prison. Eugene V. Debs, a real one. Terre Haute, Indiana. His house is still on Indiana State grounds. Well, so that's the other thing. So the evangelical right was all about segregation. That's all they cared about. And the white supremacy segregation issue was not a winner. You can't go out and talk about that stuff in public. People are racist and they're prejudiced, but they don't want to talk about it, right? Trump would get right up to the line and then people would go ahead and take over. Well, the evangelical right decided the better issue for them publicly was going to be abortion. And that's where they took off. And they don't care about abortion. They've never planned on actually getting Roe v. Wade overturned. That was never what they were actually trying to do. It was just an emotional issue that made sure that the evangelical right got in line. That's it. That's it. Sheila Garcia, what can we do to stop the coup? I organized for our area with Protect the Vote, but no activation. We voted Biden. I've wrote all reps multiple times. What else can we do with our limited power and means to protect our democracy? These are all great things to do. The other thing that we need to do is we need to talk to the people in our lives, because here's the thing. So again, I say this often. Here we are hanging out on a Sunday night. I'm drinking bourbon. Y'all are watching me drink bourbon. You know, we're over an hour into this. There's a few hundred people in here. That's fucking awesome. We are obviously tuned into what is going on. We are passionate. We care about this stuff. There are people in your life who probably care about it as much as you do. There are probably other people in your life who care about it. They don't really talk about it, you know, or maybe they're not getting involved and they're like, yeah, I don't like Trump either. Trump's disgusting, but they don't really want to talk about it. You need to talk to people. When you talk to another person and you share reality, and that goes back to solidarity, it goes back to alienation. When you start talking to other people and they realize that other people in their life feel the way that they do, they might actually start to get involved too. They might get some skin in the game as well. So if you want to look for something that you can do, start talking to people. Start repairing alienation. Start having conversations and be like, hey, did you know that like this austerity is not real and that it's an artificial project that's put in place to make us fight over scraps? And they were like, I mean, I've always kind of thought that, but I didn't know other people thought it. When you start comparing notes, this is a really big thing. This is why alienation is such a weapon. Oh, Renee, you don't have to talk to people who think your rights should be taken away. You don't have to have those conversations. You do not have to talk about that stuff. That's another thing. I'm so glad that you said that, Renee. There is this thing where people keep pushing the idea that we should be talking to Trump supporters and be like, how do you feel? Can you explain to me what it is you believe? because I just want to listen and I want to reach across the aisle. Stop listening to Trump people. Stop going into diners. Stop taking these people at face value. They're spewing propaganda. There's no reason to talk to them about that stuff. There's no reason to talk to somebody and be like, why is it you think that I should be in a cage? Why is it you think I don't have a right over my body? Stop talking to them about this stuff. They are just pushing mind-washed propaganda. You do not have to unite with these people. We can deal with the economic and political circumstances that make them the way that they are. But you do not have to talk to people who don't believe that you deserve rights. You do not have to talk to people who will hurt you. You do not have to give Trumpism any oxygen. In fact, we need to stop talking to them. We need to stop putting them on programs. We need to stop pretending like they're saying anything besides the most fucking insane bullshit. They have been brainwashed. They are in a cult. Treating it like it's real doesn't help them. We have to stop giving them oxygen, and we need to get rid of that shit. But we can deal with the economic and political reasons that they have become radicalized. Because the sad truth, this is sad, but it's true. The sad truth is that economic incentives win out all the time. It wins out all the time. The reason we are in this moment is because of vast inequality. It's because things have become so strangled by the powerful and the wealthy that we're all hurting. And what happens when we're hurting and we're suffering austerity? Those tribal instincts just start fucking taking over. Yeah, we cannot keep talking to them. We cannot keep pretending like this is a legitimate thing. It's a lie. We cannot legitimize it because all we're doing is enabling them. So I completely agree. You don't have to talk to anybody who wants to deny you rights. I think that's an interesting point too. Winston said that we can talk to people and figure out who supports this right or whatever. I think there are people in this country that you're not going to reach. There are people in this country who want to destroy this country, push it into a new civil war, and create a new fascist dictatorship. You're not going to get those people. You are not going to get those people. I'm sorry. There's no argument. There's no West Wing swelling of music. Jed Bartlett lays it out in all of his intellectual glory. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. But there are people in this country who would not behave this way if the country didn't feel this way. That's rough. But I have to tell you, because here's the thing. Right now, we're talking about a larger political situation. You and I are not going to keep Donald Trump from carrying out a coup except for making people aware that a coup is possible. We can disseminate information. We can germinate the idea that American democracy is in trouble. That is something that we can do. But they have transformed politics into a TV show that we watch and we're like, oh God, I'm so worried. Oh, I hope the next episode's better. It doesn't have to be like that. We need to start sharing information. We need to repair alienation. We need to communicate with people. But you don't need to talk to people and listen to their bullshit or have them abuse you ever. That's call that to an end. And I don't care how many blue ribbon committees Joe Biden sets up. It's bullshit. It's not going to happen. You cannot take these people at face value and have this thing de-radicalized or change. No way. No possible way. Matt. Oh, real fast. Gouda Maccabee says, hypothetically, the coup happens. What are the first things you do? First thing I do is I go in the street. Second thing I do is I make sure, well, I guess no. First thing I do is I make sure that I have goods and things to sustain me if it gets worse. I keep telling everybody, and I think we talked about it on the Muckrake in the community. Matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, I'm fairly certain that Amber, the Muckrake community, put together a really good prepper sheet in terms of what you should have in case of mass chaos. Yeah, I think that's over at patreon.com/Muckrake podcast. I think. Could be wrong about that, but I think it is. I make sure that all my stuff is in place in case things get really, really bad. Second thing is I go out in the street. Third thing is I start forming organizations with other people. I reach out to the people I know who have these things. That's part of the thing. By having conversations about these things, I know other people who take this seriously and who are plugged in and who have information about these organizations. And number 4, I don't stop until my country is saved. I mean, I hate to put it like that, but like, I'm not giving this country up. I'm not just going to pretend like everything's fine. I'm not going to, salute the caravan as it goes by. You shouldn't want that either. We deserve better than this. It's horseshit. Cindy, what are your thoughts on how bad the cyber attack is? Should we consider this an act of war? I mean, it is. I don't think that we need to send troops somewhere or whatever, but it's really bad. I've talked to a couple of experts. It's about as bad as it gets. It really, really is. And we talked about this on the Muckrake podcast on the last episode, and it's like Trump just kind of looked the other way, as organized crime came in and took everything out of the truck. The things that he has enabled with Russia are just, it's really hard to wrap your head around. You know what I mean? Like, it really, truly is hard to wrap your head around what he has allowed and what he has enabled. But no, the Russian thing was massive. And I've talked to enough people now who have talked about it. They think one of the main things besides intelligence and, system information, a lot of people think that there's something going on with the power grid. And I mean, if something like that happened, it'd be really bad. Kevin says, how aggressive should the Biden admin be about discovering and prosecuting Trump? Very aggressive, but they're not going to. I'm sorry. I know that it's a very popular thing to go on social media and be like, Trump will be in jail on January 20th at 5 p.m. or at 12:01 or whatever in the time Biden swears in. Biden administration is not going to go after Trump. I'm sorry. Presidents don't prosecute other presidents because it opens the door to being prosecuted themselves. And then on top of that, they don't want to destabilize the country. So Biden is not going to go after Trump legally. Do I think New York will? Possibly. Yeah, I mean, that's what the Palmer Report always says. I mean, right? Louise Minch probably has like a Justice Eagle flying over with the indictments right now. It's a fantasy. We need to stop engaging. Oh, they absolutely need to investigate him. The crimes against humanity alone, not to mention the grift, are just absolutely absurd. But we have to stop engaging in this fantasy that the good guys are just over the hill. Don't worry, everyone. The system's going to take care of themselves. Robert Mueller's going to save us. Nancy Pelosi is working on a plan, everybody. And by the way, while you're waiting on Nancy Pelosi to save the day, why don't you buy this new wine chiller with Nancy Pelosi on it? It's a grift. It's a total grift. But no, I don't think the Biden administration is going to go after Trump. I would love to be wrong. That would be wonderful. And maybe New York will. But the cavalry is not just over the hills. Trump is a rich white man. Rich white men do not suffer consequences in this country. I don't know what else to tell you. I'm sorry. I hope New York will. But his Department of Justice is not going to go after Trump. Not a chance. I wish I was wrong. Well, you'll notice that what Pelosi has done, and I wasn't planning on talking about this, but here we are. What Pelosi has done has been largely symbolic resistance. It was her doing the clap. It was her ripping apart the speech. It was her like standing up and talking down to Trump. It's symbolism. Zachary Tinney. What are we to make of the drama with Russia? The rough timeline so far has been 2016 interference, the Taliban bounty scandal, incredible massive cyber attack. Trump either silent or protective of Russia. What's this all building towards? So here's one of the things that's happening is you got to think about Russia in terms of this. Vladimir Putin has won this round. Like he wasn't, no one really expected Donald Trump to become president. That was just like I don't know, throw some bullshit in and see what happens. No one expected Trump to be president, including Donald Trump. Vladimir Putin was pushing for this left and right to destabilize America. And Trump even getting the nomination and getting all that attention, that's a win. And then he was president and he hurt America, not just like it's standing in the world, but actually allowed Russia to come in the back door every chance it wanted and do whatever it wanted to do. He's won. He has just won this round left and right. What Vladimir Putin is interested in is what all of these anti-democratic leaders across the world are interested in. They want to get past liberalism, not like left or right liberalism. They want to get past elections. They want to get past representation. They want to install a world where they can just plunder its resources and wealth. And the rest of us, have to work in sweatshops, and our kids have to show up and, die at the age of like 15 working in a mill. That's where they want to go. So that's where all this is going. Suzanne, any chance Putin was or is holding threats of publicizing using hack over Trump's head? I think Helsinki and the whip dog demeanor and comments after. Does anyone have a timeline? I think, listen, I know this is one of those things where it's like, obviously there is an economic lever that Russia has been used over Trump. And it's either the money that they've given him or some sort of people who want their will to be carried out. And they don't care about who they hurt or what they do to society. It's the same thing. I mean, there's a reason why Trump was sending love letters to Kim Jong-un. There's a reason. What happened? Everyone's saying, uh-oh. What happened? Oh, I'm okay. See? You start talking about Vladimir Putin. Weird shit happens. Weird. So stupid. My internet. But anyway, there's a reason why Trump and Kim Jong-un were so close, why him and Netanyahu worked together. Yeah, it's just bad. It's so bad. Catherine, are you seeing any recent decline, even slight, in the numbers of people who support Trump? I'm seeing a lot of Republicans who are starting to move on. They're like, well, I still support him, but I'm ready to move on to what comes next. So I don't think that they're leaving Trump, but I think that they understand that there's something to move on to. Todd Johnston, Trumpism, the cult will likely continue even without Trump, like Scientology. Had he breached the isolation and gaslighting by right-wing propaganda outlets, the U.S. can't go on much longer to electorates consuming info from overlapping sources. So, actually, I'll answer this real fast. Rachel says, what do you feel in Georgia? I've said this from the beginning. I think either both Democrats win or one Democrat, one Republican wins. If I had to put money on it right now, I would probably say split. I would say it's a split. I would say Warnock wins and Purdue wins. That's what I would guess right now, unfortunately. So anyway, Trumpism and the cult. So this goes back to everything. I think you have to educate people. I think that you have to let them know. So I think one of the important things, and here's something to learn. Here's something that I don't think I've talked about on this stream or on the podcast. So let's start with the fact that conspiracy theories are simplified explanations of larger things that affect people. It explains powerlessness without getting into the important stuff, right? The actual things that are happening. I think when you find conspiracy theories, what you have to do is you need to respond to the conspiracy theory with the actual truth behind it. Because the truth behind it, this is important. We have to stop doing this Democrat versus Republican dynamic. Because one of the things that we keep doing is when we try and explain things that conspiracy theories are trying to cover up. So, for instance, the New World Order, right? It's this idea that Bill Clinton and liberals are engaged in a conspiracy to get rid of American industry and hand it over to the United Nations. No, that's not true. The New World Order was a simplified explanation of the global economy. And what you actually find is that it was dreamed up by Ronald Reagan and a bunch of right-wing think tanks. The main legwork for things like NAFTA was done by Reagan and George H.W. Bush, but it was carried over the finish line by Bill Clinton. And if you look at the history, actually, NAFTA was passed by Bill Clinton with the help of Republicans. It was a bipartisan deal. And so if you actually talk about globalism, you can talk about the fact the Democratic Party actually failed a bunch of people via global economy. They thought it would help everybody, but it didn't help. My whole point here is when you try and explain what's happened in the world, but you do it along partisan lines, that trench warfare that we're experiencing right now, that doesn't go away. But when you have a conversation that actually says, you know what, there's been a lot of mistakes on a lot of different sides, and it's the powerful and us, all of a sudden that conspiracy theory, it crashes in. And all of a sudden it's like, there's us and there's the powerful. And all of a sudden, if we start talking about there's us and there's them, that changes the dynamic. So if you have to deal with people who are pushing conspiracy theories, give them the actual facts behind the conspiracy, which means that you have to also educate yourself behind what is the New World Order. It's a quick explanation, quick, easy, supernatural, good versus evil explanation of globalism. What is the deep state? Well, I got bad news for you. The deep state kind of exists. It's not this, a bunch of like people in a shadowy room doing a bunch of things. The deep state is the American hegemonic project, which continues regardless of who's in office. If you actually look at our foreign policy outside the disastrous Iraq war, if you actually take the George W. Bush administration into the Obama administration, and you look at like foreign policy and also the way that the markets work and stuff like that, they kind of look alike. It doesn't mean that Obama was like George W. Bush, but it means that there is this internal momentum. There's an internal momentum to our politics. It doesn't matter who's in charge. So when Trump says there's a deep state, he's not right, but he's not wrong, if that makes sense. There is an ongoing thing. Some people refer to it as the blob, the national security state that just continues to go regardless of who's in power. So we have to meet these conspiracy theories by actually, without deep state, you can't explain Manafort, Stone, Rumsfeld, Rove, or Trump. I completely agree. Oh, I disagree with that. Winston, I think that's what Trump says. So Winston says the deep state is civil service workers, the cogs in the bureaucracy that keeps the nation humming along. I think that's what Trump makes it. And I think that that's actually what makes our government great, is that there are a bunch of people who actually put aside any sort of personal glory or profit in order to make this stuff work. That's who he targets. The real problem, going back to what we talked about, is it's this national security state. That's where all of our money is going. I'm sorry, but the fact that we're only like giving out $600, well, I don't know. There's probably an aircraft carrier that launched in the last 5 minutes. Yeah, I completely agree, Winston. He changed what it was, which is the same thing Reagan did. He's like, oh, the government's terrible. You shouldn't give it its money, although I'm going to run up massive deficits. That's neither here nor there. Ethan, how about Nate Silver going after epidemiologists? How about Nate Silver in general? What a useless person. I love that Nate Silver has gone from this sort of like liberal technician / like technocratic dude, and he has just shown his ass over and over and over again, and it couldn't happen to a better person. A guy who thinks that this whole thing is just a game. My God, does Nate Silver suck. The whole thing sucks. Nate Silver sucks. Matty Iglesias sucks. I'm glad that Silver mentioned Iglesias too. They deserve each other. Good luck, guys. Good luck. What a bunch of assholes. Incredible. I saw that. And I was just like, you do you, Nate. Get after it. Trumpism is fascism. Fox is running ads, combating Newsmax and OANN. Absolutely they are. Fox News, who is just hemorrhaging millions because OANN and Newsmax are picking up the Trump supporters who don't want to believe that Trump actually lost the election. Fox News, and I was telling everybody this, I wrote about it for the Daily Beast. Fox News is like, oh no, we have to go further right. which is where we're going. The Republican Party is going to wrap its arms around Donald Trump's legs, and it's going to be dragged right into the black abyss. And it's all about financial incentive. Every time. Financial incentive. Fox News, if you thought Fox News was bad, it's going to get worse. It's already showing it understands that it's going to get worse. It has to. It has to do it to survive. The Republican Party has to absorb Trumpism and accept it. And that's what they're going to do. That's where they're going to go. All right, we got two more. Alex, as we get closer to Biden's inauguration, what would be better for the country? The moderate return to normalcy or a slew of executive orders undoing as much of the damage of the Trump admin as quickly as possible? I think the return to normalcy thing is bullshit. Normal is what got us Trump. I keep saying this. Trump is a symptom. He's not the disease. America was not fine before Donald Trump. America was very, very sick. Mia, happy early 50th birthday. I hope it's a great one. I'm sorry you have to spend it in quarantine, but hopefully 51, 52, 53, and so on and so forth will make up for the time. Cheers. Happy early birthday. Sucks. I hate this whole situation. They should have helped us. Should have made this thing, and instead they carried out crimes against humanity, but that's neither here nor there. So there is no normal. Normal is just going to get worse. I hate to tell you. It's just going to get worse if we treat it like things are totally fine. Executive orders, I think, go a certain way, but I think the best thing that Joe Biden could possibly do is to get up and use the bully pulpit. He won by over 7 million votes. He received more votes than any presidential candidate of all time. He won in an electoral landslide. I think it's time that he gets up on the bully pulpit and he says, which is something that nobody has done for a very long time. You get up and you say, these are the people who are keeping me from helping you. And you change the narrative. Everybody thinks that things can't change, but they change so fast. Reality can change so fast. All you have to do is get the people in the media on your side, and the narrative changes so fast. And that's what Biden needs to do. Get up, use the bully pulpit, and be like, hey, I'm not even doing partisan stuff. I'm trying to throw money into middle America. And all of a sudden, middle America is like, I'm sorry, what? You're trying to throw money at us. I'm sorry, you have my attention. What do you mean you're trying to throw money at us? It's like, well, if those Republicans you voted for would help me, I would throw some money in middle America. And they'd be like, I think maybe Biden stole the election, but I could maybe get on board with this. Use the bully pulpit. And it's time. It's time. It's way past time. The Democratic Party has to start calling out the Republican Party on its bullshit. They're afraid to. They're terrified to, because they might say mean things. Please, sir, don't say mean things. Don't call me a socialist, sir. I mean, we're both capitalists. Please don't call me a socialist, sir. Wait, you're saying I'm weak on crime? I'm going to put so many people in jail just to show you're wrong. Democratic Party has failed because they're so afraid of getting called names. It's awful. Awful. Get up, use your bully pulpit, get it over with. Tell middle America you're going to throw money at them if only the Republicans get in line. Just go. Just go. By the way, that ain't my small town rural person voice. That's my actual voice. That's where I come from. I come from the country. I don't know how to tell you that. I come from the country. All right, last one. Xmas sauce, which I don't know what Xmas sauce would be. I guess it would be like a peppermint. Is that what it would be? Peppermint? I guess it would be a peppermint sauce. Xmas sauce. Can we get a break from the craziness for the holidays? I just want some time to relax. I do too. We need it because we've had, I would say, 4 straight years, but cranberry sauce should be Xmas sauce. That's a good point. on top of that is like going back another year to when Trump came around, 5 years of just nonstop fascistic madness. We need a break. Trump will not give us a break. But I wanted to take this question, and I wanted to say it is incredibly important to have a couple of things happen. And this is really, really, really important stuff. So I'm glad that you hung out. I'm glad that, you didn't take off yet. First and foremost, it is absolutely important to keep a constant eye on all this stuff. All these people right now who are telling you that everything's fine, don't worry about it, the system is held, there is no problem, they're full of it. They have no idea what they're talking about. They're selling false hope, and they're institutionalist, and they believe in a meritocracy that is going to just continue on in perpetuity. They're wrong. You got to keep an eye on this thing. This fight is not over. Just because the election was won, that's just a momentary pause to breathe. That's all this is. If we don't fix this thing, it's going to get worse than Trump. I'm sorry to tell you that, but it's true. But we also have to celebrate life as we do it. We cannot let these fuckers grind us down. All right? We have to enjoy the people that we love. We have to enjoy life. We have to love. We have to care. We have to experience. That is the thing, is that fascism means to grind you down to the point where it's like, just leave me alone in my own house. I don't care what you do. I don't care how many people you hurt. I don't care what you do to reality and the world and all of it. It's about exhausting you. It's about making you feel hopeless and alone. You are not alone, and you are not hopeless. You're not powerless. There's incredible power within us. There's more of us than there are of them. Once we start talking, once we start building communities, once we start understanding that we're all in this together and that we can get further ahead through solidarity and community, we're going to turn this motherfucker around. But you cannot let them grind you down. If you let them grind you down, they win. So you need to get some rest. You need to find the things that you are thankful for, find the people you are thankful for, and you need to do the hard work of living. It's not just fighting these people. It's you have to live, and you have to bolster yourself and energize yourself in order to beat back this bullshit. We're going to do this thing. I firmly, honestly believe that. And I'm not, I don't get on here, I don't peddle false hope. I think we're going to beat back fascism. I think we're going to make a better world. But we got it. So spend your holiday season with some joy. Ignore Trump unless, I don't know, unless he tries to pull something off. And then I guess we'll do an emergency thing and we'll talk about it. Try and get some rest. Enjoy yourselves. I hope that you and yours have such an awesome holiday. Nick and I are going to put out a podcast on Tuesday. Then we're going to take Friday off because it is the holiday. Then we are going to have our first feature-length audio documentary come out, I hope, the last week of December. We're working on it. Very, very pumped about it. I'll let you know more about it pretty soon. Yeah, I'll tell you what. It is the holiday season. I'm going to show you something real fast. Somebody asked for a puppy pic, so here's what I'm going to do. Stay warm, everybody. It's cold out there. Look at that. Look at that. That thing's out in the world. So ridiculous. Just a little cold dog. Little cold dog. Before we go, I just want to say one last time that I appreciate you. This has been it's been a rough go, man. President of the United States pushing a military coup. It is so rough and so hard, and I get so much energy and momentum and solace from the rest of you. It means the world to me that you're hanging out with me. I'm going to come back a week from today, and we're going to have our last bourbon talk of 2020. By the way, get the hell out 2020. Am I right? Get the hell out. So I thank you. We're going to do this thing. There's more of us than there are of them. We can make any reality possible. We simply have to believe in it, and we have to push for it, and we have to fight for it. This thing is not over. We have not reached the point of no return. Take this week, rest, come back, ready to fight. Cheers. Happy holidays, everybody. All right, get out of here.